The sound of splintering wood jolted Naomi awake at 2 in the morning. She knew that sound, the crack of someone forcing their way through a door that was never meant to withstand real violence. Her apartment door. Her hands shook as she grabbed her phone, but before she could dial emergency services, she heard his voice. The voice that had haunted her dreams for 6 months. The voice she'd crossed an ocean to escape. Naomi, I know you're in there. You think you can just leave? You think you can just disappear? Williams, her ex-boyfriend. The man she'd fled from in Seattle. The man who'd promised he'd find her no matter where she ran. And now he was here, in Korea, breaking down the door of the tiny apartment she'd rented in a quiet building in Itaewon, destroying the fragile sense of safety she'd barely begun to build. Naomi pressed herself against the bedroom wall, her breath coming in short gasps. The door gave way with a final crack, and she heard his footsteps in her living room, heavy and deliberate. She looked around frantically for something, anything she could use to defend herself. Her bedroom door had no lock. There was nowhere to run. The window led to a 4th-floor drop that would kill her just as surely as whatever Williams had planned. I've been watching you, Naomi, Williams called out, his voice sickeningly calm now that he was inside. Watching you go to work, watching you come home alone every night. Did you really think you could hide from me? Did you think I wouldn't find you? She heard him moving through her apartment, opening doors, getting closer to the bedroom. Her phone slipped from her sweating hands and hit the floor with a soft thud. Williams laughed. I heard that. Come out, baby. Let's talk about this like adults. You know I love you. You know you belong with me. Naomi's throat closed up. She'd heard those words before, right before he'd put her in the hospital the last time. Right before she'd drained her savings account, bought a one-way ticket to Seoul, and disappeared into a city where she didn't speak the language and didn't know a soul. She'd thought distance would save her. She'd thought anonymity would protect her. She'd been wrong. The bedroom door swung open. Williams stood in the doorway, backlit by the living room light, and Naomi saw what he was holding. A knife. Not a kitchen knife, but something longer, more purposeful. Something he'd brought specifically for this. There you are, he said softly. I've missed you. Naomi couldn't speak, couldn't move. Her body had frozen in pure terror, every nightmare she'd had for the past 6 months crystallizing into this single moment. Williams took a step into the room, and then another. You made me do this, you know, he continued, his voice taking on that reasonable tone that always preceded violence. If you'd just answered my messages, if you'd just talked to me, it wouldn't have come to this. But you ignored me. You blocked me. You ran away like I'm some kind of monster. He raised the knife slightly. I'm not a monster, Naomi. I'm the man who loves you. And if I can't have you, then no one can. He lunged forward, and Naomi screamed, a raw, desperate sound that tore from her throat. She threw up her arms instinctively, knowing it wouldn't be enough, knowing this was how she died. But Williams never reached her. 1 second he was rushing toward her with the knife raised, and the next second he was yanked backward by a force Naomi couldn't see. He hit the bedroom wall with a sound that drove the air from his lungs, and the knife clattered to the floor. Naomi blinked, trying to process what she was seeing. A man stood in her bedroom doorway. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark clothes that made him almost blend with the shadows. Her neighbor. The man from next door who'd never spoken to her beyond a brief nod in the hallway. The man who moved through the building like a ghost, who somehow made every other resident find reasons to turn around when they saw him coming. He didn't say a word. He just looked at Williams with an expression of such absolute coldness that Naomi felt the temperature in the room drop. Williams, pressed against the wall, stared back with eyes that had gone from rage to something else. Something Naomi had never seen in him before. Fear. Who the fuck are you? Williams wheezed, trying to pull himself upright. This is between me and my girlfriend. Get out before you. The neighbor moved faster than Naomi thought possible for a man his size. One moment he was in the doorway. The next he had Williams by the throat, lifting him slightly off the ground with one hand. Williams's eyes bulged. He clawed at the hand around his throat, making choking sounds. Leave, the neighbor said. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, but there was something underneath it that made Naomi's skin prickle. Leave this building. Leave this city. Leave this country. If I see you near her again, if I hear you've contacted her, if you so much as think about her too loudly. He leaned in close, and whatever he whispered in Williams's ear made her ex-boyfriend go completely still. Then the neighbor released him. Williams dropped to his feet, gasping, and scrambled backward out of the bedroom. Naomi heard him stumble through her destroyed living room, heard him practically fall down the hallway outside. The building's front door slammed, and then there was silence. The neighbor turned to look at her. Naomi was still pressed against the wall, trembling so hard her teeth chattered. He studied her for a long moment with dark, unreadable eyes, then bent down and picked up the knife Williams had dropped. He examined it briefly, then slipped it into his jacket pocket. "You can't stay here tonight," he said. His voice had returned to that flat, emotionless tone. "Pack what you need. You have 5 minutes." "I what?" Naomi's voice came out as a croak. "I don't understand. Who are you? How did you?" "5 minutes," he repeated, and walked out of her bedroom. Naomi stood frozen for another 30 seconds, her mind trying and failing to process what had just happened. Then survival instinct kicked in. She grabbed her suitcase, the same one she'd arrived in Korea with, still half unpacked, and started throwing clothes into it. Laptop, phone charger, passport, the emergency cash she kept hidden in a book. Her hands shook so badly she could barely zip the suitcase closed. When she emerged from the bedroom, her neighbor was standing in the destroyed doorway of her apartment, examining the damage Williams had done. The door hung at an angle, the lock mechanism completely shattered. He looked at her, then at her suitcase, and nodded. "Follow me," he said. "Where are we going?" Naomi asked, but he was already walking down the hallway. She hesitated for only a second before following. What choice did she have? Williams was out there somewhere. Her door was broken. And this stranger, this terrifying stranger who'd just saved her life, was the only thing standing between her and whatever Williams might do next. The neighbor's apartment was right next door to hers. She'd walked past his door hundreds of times, but had never been inside, had never even wondered what it looked like. He unlocked it and held the door open, waiting for her to enter. The apartment was almost identical to hers in layout. Same small living room, same galley kitchen, same bedroom and bathroom configuration. But where her apartment had been full of the small attempts at comfort she'd accumulated over 3 months, throw pillows, plants, cheap artwork from street markets, his was sparse to the point of emptiness. A black leather couch, a coffee table with nothing on it, no pictures on the walls, no books on the shelves. It looked like a hotel room, or a place someone was living temporarily while waiting for something. "You can sleep in the bedroom," he said, closing and locking the door behind them. "I'll take the couch." "I can't." "You don't have to," Naomi started, but he cut her off with a look. "The bedroom has a lock on the inside of the door," he said. "You'll feel safer there." He was right, and she hated that he was right. She nodded mutely and wheeled her suitcase toward the bedroom. At the doorway, she paused and turned back. "Thank you," she said, for what you did. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't." "Yes, you do," he said quietly. "Get some rest. We'll talk in the morning." Naomi closed the bedroom door and turned the lock with shaking fingers. Then she collapsed onto the bed, still fully clothed, and let the tears come. She cried silently into a pillow that smelled like unfamiliar laundry detergent, crying for the life she'd tried to build that had just been shattered again, crying for the fact that she'd never be safe, crying because she'd just been saved by a man who terrified her almost as much as Williams did. Eventually, exhaustion pulled her under into a fitful sleep filled with nightmares. She woke to daylight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. Williams, the knife, her neighbor, the impossible strength in his hand when he'd lifted Williams off the ground like he weighed nothing. Naomi sat up slowly. Her body ached like she'd been in a fight, though Williams had never actually touched her. She looked at her phone, 8:30 in the morning. She was supposed to be at work by 9. She opened her work chat to send a message saying she was sick, but her hands were shaking too badly to type. A soft knock on the bedroom door made her jump. "Coffee's ready," her neighbor's voice said. "When you're ready." Naomi took a long breath, then unlocked the door and stepped out. Her neighbor was standing in the kitchen, pouring coffee into 2 plain white mugs. He was dressed in dark slacks and a black button-down shirt, looking like he was about to go to some kind of business meeting. His hair was damp from a recent shower. He handed her one of the mugs without a word. Naomi took it, wrapping her hands around the warmth, and studied him properly for the first time. He was probably in his early 30s, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. There was a scar along his jawline, barely visible, and his hands, those hands that had lifted Williams so effortlessly, were scarred across the knuckles. "What's your name?" she asked. It seemed absurd that she didn't know the name of the man whose apartment she'd spent the night in, whose protection she was apparently under. "Kong Min-jun," he said. "You're Naomi Carter." "How do you know my name?" She hadn't told him. Hadn't told anyone in the building, actually. She'd signed her lease as N. Carter, paying 6 months in advance in cash, trying to leave as small a footprint as possible. "I make it my business to know who's living next door to me," Min-jun said. He took a sip of his coffee, watching her over the rim of the mug. "Especially when that person is running from something." Naomi's throat tightened. "I'm not." "You paid 6 months' rent in cash," Min-jun said. "You have no social media presence. You work at a language academy teaching English, but you never socialize with your coworkers. You take different routes home every night. You check over your shoulder constantly. You're careful about who can see into your apartment." He paused. "You're running. The question is from what? Or who?" "That's none of your business," Naomi said, but her voice came out weak. "It became my business when he broke into your apartment with a knife at 2 in the morning, Min-jun replied. His tone was matter of fact, no judgment, just statement of fact. "Williams Washington, originally from Seattle. Your ex-boyfriend. You left him 6 months ago after he put you in the hospital with 3 broken ribs and a concussion." Naomi took an involuntary step backward. "How do you can't possibly." "I can and I do," Min-jun said. "When I heard the noise last night and saw who was breaking into your apartment, I had someone run a background check. It took about 20 minutes. He set his coffee down. "What I want to know is why he's here. Seattle to Seoul is a long way to chase an ex-girlfriend, even for someone clearly unstable. What aren't you telling me?" "I don't know what you mean," Naomi said, but even she could hear the lie in her voice. Min-jun's eyes narrowed slightly. "Naomi, the man who tried to kill you last night isn't going to stop just because I scared him. He'll either leave the country or he'll come back with help. Which one depends on why he's really here. So I'll ask again, what aren't you telling me?" Naomi sat down heavily on the couch, the coffee mug clutched in both hands. She was so tired of running, so tired of lying, so tired of being scared. And something about Min-jun's complete lack of emotion, his matter-of-fact acceptance of the violence that had just occurred, made her think he might actually understand. "Williams wasn't just my boyfriend," she said quietly. "He worked for people. Bad people. He said it was just security work, just protecting shipments. But I'm not stupid. I knew what he was really doing. Drug running," Min-jun said. "It wasn't a question." Naomi nodded. "I didn't know the details. I didn't want to know. But about 8 months ago, Williams started acting paranoid. He said there was a shipment coming in, something big, and that if it went right he'd be set for life. He started talking about leaving Seattle, moving somewhere tropical, taking me with him. But the shipment didn't go right," Min-jun said. "No." Naomi's hands tightened around the mug. "There was a raid. Federal agents, from what I could piece together. The shipment was seized, people were arrested, and suddenly Williams was." She trailed off, not sure how to describe the man Williams had become after that. More violent, more unstable, more convinced that someone had betrayed him. "He was looking for someone to blame," Min-jun finished. "And he blamed you." "I didn't do anything," Naomi said desperately. "I had nothing to do with his work. I never even met his associates. But he was convinced I'd talked to someone, that I'd been the leak. He said," her voice dropped to a whisper, "he said I'd stolen from him, that I had something that belonged to his bosses." "Do you?" Min-jun asked. "No, I don't know what he's talking about. I left with one suitcase and my passport. I didn't take anything of his." Min-jun was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "Naomi," he said finally, "I need you to think very carefully. Did Williams ever give you anything to hold on to? A package, a storage key, a phone, anything?" "No, Naomi stopped. There had been something. One thing. About a week before everything fell apart, Williams had given her a necklace. She'd thought it was a guilt gift, something to make up for the increasingly frequent arguments. It had been beautiful, a delicate silver chain with a small pendant shaped like a Celtic knot. She'd worn it every day until the night he put her in the hospital. "There was a necklace," she said slowly. He gave it to me maybe 2 weeks before the raid. I left it behind when I ran. I couldn't take anything that reminded me of him. Describe it, Min-jun said, and there was a sudden sharpness to his attention that made Naomi's skin prickle. She described the necklace as best she could remember, the silver chain, the pendant with its intricate knotwork design. As she spoke, she saw something shift in Min-jun's expression. Not quite surprise, but something close to it. The pendant, he said. Did it unscrew? Was it hollow? Naomi blinked. I don't know. I never tried to open it. Why would I? Min-jun stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Seoul skyline. Because that's not a pendant. It's a container. And if Williams gave it to you, and if the raid happened shortly after, then you were carrying something very valuable without knowing it. What? What could possibly? A USB drive, Min-jun said. Small enough to fit inside that pendant. Probably containing information about the shipment, routes, contacts, financial records, insurance, in case something went wrong. He turned back to face her. If Williams worked for who I think he worked for, that information would be worth a lot of money to a lot of different people. And if he thinks you still have it. But I don't. Naomi almost shouted. I left it behind. I left everything behind. He doesn't believe that, Min-jun said calmly. Or he knows you don't have it, and he's been sent to tie up loose ends. The coffee mug slipped from Naomi's hands, hitting the floor and shattering. Coffee spread across the hardwood in a dark stain. She stared at it, then at Min-jun, and felt something break inside her chest. I can't do this, she whispered. I ran so far. I gave up everything. I learned a new language. I started over completely, and it wasn't enough. It's never going to be enough. He's never going to stop. They're never going to stop, and I'm going to die in some apartment in a city where I don't even speak the language properly. Stop, Min-jun said, and the single word cut through her rising panic. He crossed the room and crouched in front of her, careful not to get too close, not to crowd her. You're not going to die. Not while you're under my protection. Why? Naomi asked, and there were tears running down her face now. Why do you care? You don't even know me. Why would you help me? Min-jun was quiet for a long moment. Because I know what it's like to run, he said finally. And because what's happening to you, it's connected to something bigger. Something that involves me whether I want it to or not. Naomi wiped at her eyes. What do you mean? The shipment that got raided in Seattle, Min-jun said. I know about it. The people Williams worked for, they have connections here in Korea. To organizations I have history with. He stood, moving back to give her space. When you moved into this building, I recognized the signs of someone running. I didn't know the specifics until last night, but I knew you were hiding from something. Are you saying that my moving here wasn't random? Naomi asked, a new kind of fear creeping into her voice. That somehow Williams found me because of you? No, Min-jun said firmly. Your moving here was coincidence. Bad luck. But Williams finding you, that wasn't about me. That was about the necklace and what he thinks you have. He paused. However, the people who sent Williams, the people he works for, I do have connections to them, which means I can protect you from them. How? Naomi asked. How can you possibly protect me from people like that? Min-jun's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, something cold and dangerous that made Naomi remember how easily he'd lifted Williams, how terrified her ex had been. Because I'm someone they don't cross, he said simply. The way he said it, with such absolute certainty, should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded like simple statement of fact. Naomi believed him, and that belief was almost as terrifying as everything else. What do you want from me? She asked. Because nobody gave protection for free, especially not protection from organized criminals. There was always a price. I want you to trust me, Min-jun said. I want you to stop running. Stay here, under my watch, while I clean up this situation. And after? After you clean it up? What happens to me then? That depends, Min-jun said. On what you want to happen. Before Naomi could ask what he meant by that, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, looked at the screen, and his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I need to make a call, he said. Stay here. Don't answer the door for anyone except me. He stepped into the bedroom and closed the door, leaving Naomi sitting on the couch surrounded by broken ceramic and spilled coffee. She heard the low murmur of his voice through the door, speaking rapid Korean that was too fast and too quiet for her limited vocabulary to follow. She looked around his apartment again, this time paying attention to the details. No personal items, but expensive everything. The coffee maker was high-end, the TV was top of the line, the furniture was clearly custom-made. This was the apartment of someone with money and no interest in comfort. Someone who used the space purely functionally. Who was Kang Min-jun? And what had she gotten herself into by accepting his help? The bedroom door opened, and Min-jun emerged with his phone in hand. His expression was grimmer than before. "We have a problem," he said. "What kind of problem?" "Williams didn't leave Korea," Min-jun said. "He made contact with the people who sent him here. They're sending more people, not to retrieve information, but to send a message." "What message?" Naomi asked, though she was terrified she already knew the answer. "That loose ends get tied up permanently," Min-jun said, "and that anyone who interferes." He trailed off, but the implication was clear. "They're coming after both of us," Naomi whispered. "Yes," Min-jun said. "Which means we need to move quickly. I need to take you somewhere safer than this apartment." "Where could possibly be safer then?" "My family's compound," Min-jun said. "It's outside the city, secure, and monitored constantly. You'll be under full protection there." Naomi stood up abruptly. No, I'm not going to some compound with someone I just met. I don't even know who you really are. For all I know, you're—" "What?" Min-jun asked, his voice suddenly cold. "Like them? Is that what you think?" "I don't know what to think," Naomi shouted. "Yesterday my biggest concern was teaching English to middle schoolers. Now I'm caught up in some kind of criminal conspiracy involving drug shipments, and people who want to kill me, and a neighbor who somehow has a family compound and connections to the exact same organizations that sent my ex-boyfriend after me. So yes, I'm a little concerned about whose protection I'm accepting." Silence fell between them, tense and charged. Min-jun looked at her for a long moment, and Naomi saw something shift in his expression, not anger, but something like respect. "You're right to be concerned," he said finally. "You're right to question everything. So let me be clear about who I am, and then you can decide whether to trust me or take your chances on your own." He gestured to the couch. Naomi sat slowly, her heart pounding. Min-jun remained standing, hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. "My family has been involved in certain business operations in Korea for 3 generations," he said. "Import, export, security, real estate. Some of it legal, some of it less so. The organizations that your ex-boyfriend worked for in Seattle, they're connected to similar operations here. Sometimes we work together. Sometimes we work against each other. It's complicated." "You're a criminal," Naomi said flatly. "I'm a businessman," Min-jun corrected, "who operates in gray areas when necessary. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting." "Fair enough," Min-jun said. "But here's what you need to understand. The people who sent Williams after you, the people who are sending more now, they don't care about you personally. You're just a problem to be solved. But I do care, because you're living in my building, in my territory, and that makes you my responsibility. And I protect what's mine." "I'm not yours," Naomi said. "No," Min-jun agreed. "But you're under my roof, which amounts to the same thing in my world. So here are your options. You can come with me to the compound where I can guarantee your safety, or you can leave and try to disappear again. I won't stop you. But if you leave, I can't protect you, and I give you maybe 48 hours before they find you." Naomi wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the apartment. "Why are you doing this?" she asked again. "Really?" Min-jun was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard it before. "Because 5 years ago, someone helped me when I was in a situation not unlike yours. Someone took a risk on me when they didn't have to. I've been paying that debt forward ever since." He paused. "And because I've seen what happens to people who get caught between organizations like ours. It's not pretty, and it's not something I want on my conscience if I can prevent it." Naomi looked into his eyes, searching for deception, for manipulation, for any sign that this was another trap. But all she saw was a strange kind of sincerity, the honesty of someone who dealt in violence but was trying, in his own way, to do something right. "If I go with you," she said slowly, "what are the rules? What are the boundaries?" "You stay at the compound until this is resolved," Min-jun said. "You don't leave without security. You don't contact anyone from your old life. And you follow my instructions regarding your safety. And what do I have to do in exchange?" "Nothing," Min-jun said. "I'm not asking for payment, Naomi. I'm offering protection because it's the right thing to do." Naomi almost laughed. The right thing to do, according to a man who admitted to being involved in organized crime. But she was out of options, out of places to run, out of ways to keep herself alive. And somewhere deep down, beneath all the fear and uncertainty, she believed him. Okay, she said. I'll go with you. Min-jun nodded once, as if he'd expected this answer all along. Pack your things. We leave in 1 hour. The compound was nothing like Naomi had imagined. She'd pictured something dark and fortress-like, all concrete walls and barbed wire. Instead, it was a sprawling estate in the mountains outside Seoul, traditional Korean architecture mixed with modern security features. High walls, yes, but covered in climbing vines. Gates that looked decorative but were clearly reinforced steel. Gardens that were beautiful and carefully maintained. Min-jun's car pulled through the front gates as they swung open automatically, following a long driveway to the main house. It was massive, 3 stories, with multiple wings branching off from a central building with a traditional tile roof. This is your family home? Naomi asked, staring. One of them, Min-jun said. My father prefers to stay in the city. This place is mainly used for business meetings and as a safe house when needed. They parked near the main entrance, and a woman in her 50s emerged from the house. She wore simple black pants and a white blouse, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She bowed to Min-jun and spoke to him rapidly in Korean. He responded briefly, then gestured to Naomi. This is Mrs. Lee, he said in English. She manages the household staff. She'll show you to your room and get you anything you need. If you have any problems, you talk to her or to me. No one else. I don't speak much Korean, Naomi said nervously. Mrs. Lee speaks English, Min-jun assured her. You'll be fine. Mrs. Lee smiled at Naomi, warm and grandmotherly, completely at odds with the security cameras Naomi could now see mounted discreetly along the roofline. Welcome, she said in accented but clear English. Please, come inside. Naomi followed her into the house, looking back once to see Min-jun standing beside the car, phone to his ear, his expression unreadable. Then Mrs. Lee was leading her through hallways with polished wood floors and traditional artwork on the walls, up a staircase to the second floor. This will be your room, Mrs. Lee said, opening a door to reveal a spacious bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. The room was simply furnished but beautiful, a large bed with crisp white linens, a desk, a sitting area with comfortable chairs. The adjoining bathroom had a deep soaking tub and a rainfall shower. It's beautiful, Naomi said, because it was, even though she felt like she was in some kind of fever dream. You rest now, Mrs. Lee said kindly. I will bring you something to eat. Mr. Kong says you had a difficult night. That was one way to put it. Naomi thanked her, and once Mrs. Lee left, she collapsed onto the bed. The events of the past 12 hours were catching up to her. Exhaustion mixing with adrenaline in a toxic combination that made her hands shake and her thoughts race. She was in the home of a criminal, a man who admitted to being part of the same world that had nearly destroyed her. And she was trusting him to keep her safe from other people in that same world. What choice did she have? Naomi must have dozed off, because she woke to a soft knock on the door and found that the sun had moved significantly across the sky. Come in, she called, her voice hoarse. Mrs. Lee entered with a tray of food, rice, soup, several small dishes of vegetables, and meat. You eat, she said, setting the tray on the desk. Keep your strength up. Thank you, Naomi said, and realized she was starving. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. As she finished the meal, there was another knock. This time it was Min-jun. He'd changed clothes, now wearing more casual dark jeans and a gray shirt, but still had that same watchful, controlled energy. How are you settling in? He asked from the doorway. As well as can be expected, Naomi said. Given that I'm hiding from assassins in a crime lord's house. I'm not a crime lord, Min-jun said, but there was the faintest hint of amusement in his voice. That title belongs to my father. I'm more of a mid-level manager. Despite everything, Naomi almost smiled. That makes me feel so much better. Min-jun stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. I wanted to update you on the situation. I've made contact with the people who sent Williams. Made it clear that you're under my protection and that any further attempts to harm you will be considered a direct act of aggression against my family. And they're just going to accept that? Naomi asked skeptically. They'll try to negotiate, Min-jun said. Push to see how serious I am. which is why you need to stay here where I know you're safe. For the next few days at least, people will be testing boundaries. What does that mean? It means there might be violence, Min-jun said bluntly. Not here at the compound. They wouldn't dare. But elsewhere, as various parties try to demonstrate their power. Don't be alarmed if you hear things on the news about conflicts in the city. It's just posturing. Naomi felt sick. People might get hurt because of me. People might get hurt because of decisions made by criminals and criminals alone, Min-jun corrected. You didn't ask for any of this. You're a victim who got caught in the crossfire of other people's greed. But if I just left, then you'd be dead within a week, and the conflict would happen anyway, Min-jun said. The situation with the Seattle shipment, the information that's supposedly in that necklace, that goes beyond you. You're just the excuse everyone's been waiting for to settle old scores. Naomi sat down heavily. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. Yes, Min-jun agreed. Welcome to my world. Over the next 3 days, Naomi existed in a strange kind of limbo. The compound was comfortable, almost luxurious, and Mrs. Lee made sure she had everything she needed. But she was very aware that she was a prisoner, even if a well-treated one. The walls might be covered in flowering vines, but they were still walls. The guards might bow politely, but they were still guards. Min-jun came by every evening to update her. There had been 2 incidents in the city, shootings at warehouses, both resulting in hospitalizations, but no deaths. He said this like it was good news. Naomi didn't know how to respond. On the 4th day, she was sitting in the garden, supervised, always supervised, when Min-jun found her. He sat down on the bench beside her, maintaining a careful distance. You look like you're holding up well, he said. I'm trapped in a golden cage, Naomi said. But yes, I'm alive, which is more than I expected to be at this point. Min-jun was quiet for a moment. I have news. About Williams. Naomi tensed. What about him? He's dead, Min-jun said simply. His body was found this morning in Gangnam. Single gunshot to the head. Naomi's hands went numb. Did you? No, Min-jun said. I didn't. This was the people who sent him. They decided he was more liability than asset after he failed to complete his job. They're also sending me a message that they can operate in my territory, that they're not intimidated. So it's going to get worse, Naomi said. It's going to come to a head, Min-jun corrected. Which is actually better than this dragging on for months. There's going to be a meeting tomorrow. All the relevant parties. We're going to settle this. And me? What happens to me? Min-jun turned to look at her directly. That depends on what you want. If you want, I can arrange for you to disappear properly this time. New identity, new country, enough money to start over cleanly. No one will be able to find you. And if I don't want to disappear? Naomi asked, surprising herself. Something flickered in Min-jun's eyes. Then you stay here. Under my protection. Permanently. As what? Your prisoner. As someone under my household's protection, Min-jun said carefully. It would mean accepting certain realities about who I am and what I do. It would mean understanding that your life would be connected to mine in ways that might not always be comfortable. But you'd be safe. I can promise you that. Naomi looked at him. Really looked at him. For the first time since this all began. She saw the scars on his knuckles, the careful way he held himself, the controlled violence that lurked beneath his calm exterior. But she also saw the way he'd protected her without asking for anything in return, the way he spoke to Mrs. Lee with respect, the way he'd given her choices even when he could have just made decisions for her. He was dangerous. He was involved in things she'd spent her life trying to avoid. But he was also honest about it, in his way. And she was so tired of running. I want to think about it, she said finally. Take all the time you need, Min-jun said. The meeting is tomorrow at noon. After that, one way or another, this will be over. You can decide then. He stood to leave, but Naomi reached out and caught his hand. He looked down at their joined hands in surprise. Thank you, she said, for everything. Even if I decide to disappear, I want you to know, thank you for giving me that choice. Min-jun's expression softened almost imperceptibly. You're welcome, he said quietly. Then he gently extracted his hand and walked back toward the house, leaving Naomi alone in the garden with her thoughts. The next morning, Naomi woke to the sound of vehicles arriving at the compound. From her window, she could see black cars pulling up to the main house, men in expensive suits emerging. The meeting, she realized, the one that would determine her fate. Mrs. Lee brought her breakfast and told her kindly but firmly, to stay in her room until someone came for her. Naomi ate without tasting the food, her stomach in knots. Somewhere in the house below her, powerful men were deciding whether she lived or died, whether she remained a problem or became a non-issue. Hours passed. Naomi tried to read, tried to watch television, tried to do anything to distract herself. But all she could do was wait and imagine all the ways this could go wrong. Finally, as the sun was starting to set, there was a knock on her door. She opened it to find Min-jun standing there. He looked tired, and there was a bruise forming along his jaw that hadn't been there that morning. "It's done," he said. "What's done? What happened?" "The meeting got heated," Min-jun said, touching his jaw gingerly. "But we reached an agreement. The people who sent Williams have accepted that you're under my family's permanent protection. Any attempt to harm you will be treated as an act of war." "They just agreed to that?" Naomi asked skeptically. After appropriate compensation was discussed, Min-jun said, "My father paid them for the loss of their Seattle shipment. Essentially bought your freedom." "How much?" Naomi whispered. "Enough that you now technically owe my family a significant debt," Min-jun said. "Which brings us back to the question from yesterday. What do you want to do?" Naomi looked past him, down the hallway toward the stairs that led to the main floor. She could leave. He'd given her that option. She could take a new identity and disappear to Australia or New Zealand or anywhere far from here. Or she could stay, with a man who terrified her and fascinated her in equal measure, in a world she didn't fully understand. But safe. Finally, actually safe. "If I stay," she said slowly, "what would that look like? Day to day?" "You'd live here at the compound, at least initially," Min-jun said. "Eventually, if you wanted, you could have your own place in the city, but with security. You could keep teaching, or find different work, or do nothing at all. The only requirement would be that you accept protection and don't put yourself in danger unnecessarily." "And you? What would you be to me?" Min-jun was quiet for a long moment. "Whatever you want me to be," he said finally. "Guardian, friend, or..." He trailed off, leaving the rest unspoken. Naomi's heart hammered. She thought about the past 4 days, about the way Min-jun had treated her with constant respect despite having all the power, about the way he'd offered her choices when he could have just given orders, about the way she'd started to feel safe for the first time in years, even knowing what he was. "I'll stay," she said. "For now. We can figure out the rest as we go." Min-jun's expression didn't change much, but she saw relief in his eyes. "For now is enough," he said. "Come on. Mrs. Lee is making a celebration dinner. Apparently she's pleased you're staying." As they walked down the stairs together, maintaining that careful distance they'd established, Naomi realized she was smiling. It was insane. It was probably the worst decision she'd ever made. But for the first time since she'd fled Seattle with one suitcase and a heart full of fear, she felt like she might actually have a future. It wasn't the future she'd imagined. But maybe, just maybe, it was the one she needed. 3 months later, Naomi stood in that same garden where she'd sat after learning about Williams's death. The seasons had changed. Autumn had given way to early winter, and the trees were bare now. But the compound felt less like a prison and more like a home. She'd kept teaching, though now she had a driver who took her to and from the language academy. She'd started learning Korean more seriously, with Mrs. Lee as her patient teacher. And she'd gotten to know Min-jun, not as the dangerous stranger who'd saved her life, but as a complicated man who carried the weight of his family's legacy with a quiet sense of responsibility. They had dinner together most evenings now. He told her stories about growing up in his world, about the rules and codes that governed everything. She told him about her childhood in Seattle, about the dreams she'd had before Williams, about the person she was trying to become. They didn't talk about feelings. That was a line neither of them had crossed yet. But it was there, humming between them, something neither quite knew what to do with. "Naomi," Min-jun's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him approaching across the garden. He was dressed formally, in a dark suit, which usually meant business. "How did the meeting go?" she asked. "Well enough," he said. He stopped a few feet away, maintaining that distance they'd kept for 3 months. "I have something to tell you." "That sounds ominous." "It's not. It's actually good news." Min-jun pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. For a wild moment, Naomi thought it might be a ring, and her heart did something complicated in her chest. But when he opened it, she saw a silver necklace. The necklace, the one Williams had given her. How did you? She started. I had someone retrieve it from your old apartment in Seattle, Minjun said. It's been sitting in an evidence locker. I called in a favor to get it back. Why? Naomi asked. Open the pendant, Minjun said. With shaking hands, Naomi took the necklace. She twisted the Celtic knot pendant, and it unscrewed to reveal a hollow interior. Inside was a tiny USB drive, exactly as Minjun had predicted. I wanted you to see it, Minjun said. To know that it was real, that you weren't crazy to be afraid. And then I wanted to do this. He took the pendant from her hands and threw it into the garden pond with a casual flick of his wrist. Naomi watched it sink beneath the water, taking with it the last physical connection to that nightmare. You just threw away something people died over, she said. I threw away something that was keeping you tied to the past, Minjun corrected. Whatever information was on that drive, whatever it was worth, it's not worth more than your peace of mind. The people involved have moved on. You should too. Naomi looked at him, at this man who'd paid for her freedom, who'd protected her without asking for anything in return, who'd just destroyed something valuable because he thought it would help her heal. And she made a decision. She closed the distance between them and kissed him. Minjun froze for half a second, surprise breaking through his usual control. Then his hands came up to cradle her face, and he kissed her back with an intensity that made her knees weak. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that for 3 months, he admitted. Why didn't you? Naomi asked. Because I wanted you to feel safe first, Minjun said. I wanted you to know that I wasn't expecting anything from you, that my protection wasn't conditional on. He gestured between them. And now? Naomi asked. Now I'm hoping you'll stay not because you have to, but because you want to, Minjun said quietly. I know who I am. I know what I do. I know I'm not the kind of man you probably dreamed of ending up with. But I can promise you this. I will keep you safe. I will never lie to you. And I will spend every day earning the trust you've placed in me. Naomi looked into his dark eyes and saw honesty there, and care, and something deeper that neither of them was quite ready to name yet. She thought about the girl who'd fled Seattle with one suitcase and no hope. She thought about how far she'd come, how much she'd survived. I'm not going anywhere, she said. I'm done running. I'm staying. With you. Minjun smiled then, a real smile that transformed his usually serious face into something warm and almost boyish. Good, he said, because I'm not letting you go. They stood there in the garden as winter dusk settled over the compound, two people from different worlds who'd found safety in each other. It wasn't a fairy tale. Their life together would be complicated, sometimes dangerous, always unconventional. But it was real. And for Naomi, who'd spent so long living in fear, real was more than enough. It was everything. We have come to the end of this story. What would you have done in Naomi's situation? Let me know in the comment section. Do not forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.